Yep. I'll wait for the
Now
word.
it's going.
All right, welcome everyone. This is a regular meeting of the Arlington City Council. It's March 2nd, 2020, and it is 6:31 p.m. I'm Mayor Rich Nagel. I'll be presiding. And at this time, I'll call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, roll call. Councilmember Omrine.
Here.
Councilmember Gilman.
Here.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Here.
Councilmember Batcher.
Here.
And Councilmember Morgan.
Here.
All council members present. Also at the table at my left is City Administrator Amy. I blanked on your name. Amy Newsom. On my right would be Ross Arneson. Ross is not going to be here this evening. So with that out of the way, and actually I could introduce the office. I'm trying to think of names in the audience here. Gentleman to the left. You. Curtis Ling. We have Chief Police.
John
What is wrong
Patterson.
with me? Clear my mind. Chief Police John Pedersen. And keep going here. Kurt Mank from the Enterprise, Michael Kodrowski, and Bob Luth. All right. Welcome everyone. The agenda is in front of you. Is there any changes or additions?
I have one addition.
One addition? Go ahead.
I would like to give a brief update on the ambulance dispatch issue and the bills.
And where would you like to put the
New business.
New business? Okay, ambulance update under new business, item number 11. Anything else? Okay, hearing none, there's a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Batcher, second by Councilmember Morgan to approve the agenda as amended. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Moving then to the consent agenda, item number 4. Consent agenda this evening involves the three items, I should say. They are the approval of the bills, item B, approval of the February 18th, 2020 City Council minutes, and item C, approval of the February 20th Arlington Gaylord Ambulance Trial Merger Meeting minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Gilman, second by Councilmember Omrine to approve the consent agenda as read. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. All right, moving down to item number 5, addressing the council. Does anyone here this evening wish to address the council? Seeing none, we will move on to item 6, announcements.
Presidential primary is tomorrow. I see a typo in here. It's 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., not 8 a.m. The Craft and Gift Expo is here March 7th. The blood drive is here March 10th. And the A's Bet Brunch is March 22nd, starting at 8 a.m.
Okay, any question on the announcements? Moving on to communications. Item A, discussion and liquor permit for the Bullard Hospitality Group. Michael Kodrowski. Good evening, Michael.
Good evening.
What do you have for us?
All right, so with the planned opening date of June 2020, Chef Craig's new restaurant by the name of A-Town Tavern, they've applied for a liquor license with the city. Most licenses that we have in town are from July to June for their period, but however, they do have a planned opening date of June. So in discussions with the Department of Alcohol and Gambling Enforcement, cities have the ability to enforce licenses within their own means as through council. So I'm coming to you today that we can have up to 7 liquor licenses. This will be our 4th. They're shooting for the opening date of June, but proposing either a temporary license and then their rolling license like the other ones in town, or what we could do, or what I propose would be a bit easier, would be to have their license roll from May to June instead, and they would just be prorated for that 1 extra month, and then have the normal $1,300 license, which renews annually. It'd just be from May to June. So, and research through the league and state statutes. Essentially, our code is the same as cities, and the same through League of Minnesota Cities, which we most likely borrowed from that to have our city code, from what I found in conversations with them. So, bringing it to discussion to see if we can go ahead and prorate that 1 month and then have that rolling period be from May to June for their license instead of the
So it's either
July.
So you're
period.
talking 13 months, right?
Yeah, it would be
A 13-month license for this year?
just for this year,
Yeah.
correct. And then they would start their 12-month period once that is up.
When you say
That make-
prorated,
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say that makes sense.
Yep.
You're doing less paperwork instead of doing paperwork and then doing it again
A month later, yep.
And then as far as prorated, it's not really prorated. It's just tacking.
Just
on
It's
charging
another
taking
them
the 1,300 and then dividing that.
Another
So I got about
180 bucks.
110.
adding
so-
to the 13.
Yep.
For the
and
license, one-time license for this year.
Yep.
with the extra month and then.
Mhm.
And the
Yeah.
state of Minnesota is okay with them having a 13-month license, or would it be better to have them running May 1st to April 30th of 2021?
That's what I'm proposing to have.
Oh, that's what you're asking for, to just change, not to give them a 13-month license, a
No,
12-month
they have,
license.
This one would be a temporary 1 month and then the 13. So they would just have a different period compared to the other bars in town or
Okay,
the other liquor
so-
licenses. So it's
Just to clarify,
yeah.
all the other
pardon
three,
my yes.
all the other 3 that hold liquor license, it runs from June 1,
July 1.
July
July
1
1
through
to June 30th.
June
July to
30th
June,
is
correct.
our
Yep.
running schedule. But if they're opening
No, yeah, they're planning on opening in
June,
June. So they
so
would
they'd
one.
want to
June
run
1
June 1
to July.
through.
To June 30.
No, they'd run June
31st.
1 through May
Correct.
31st, 2021. They'd have a different schedule than the other
But
3.
we could leave them on the same schedule and just
Right.
go 13
Go on
months the
13
first
on
time.
the first
I
one.
That's
think
I
you
don't
can
think
do
you
that.
can
Yeah.
do that.
The state
You-
code
that's
says it
what
has to be
they're saying.
12
It would be
months.
1
Has to
year.
Oh, it has to be
12
Has to be
12
12
months?
We
months.
can't give them a 13-month license.
Okay, well,
So
then
then
we-
it's
I-
temporary
give
for
them the
1 month.
temporary one.
I
and
thought
then
it made
12.
more sense to give them a temporary one for 1 month and have theirs come
Yeah.
due at the same time everybody else's
Right.
does.
And then we have everybody all in the
Same
same
schedule.
program,
The
other than,
same
Yep.
reset.
I would,
Theirs is just a different month compared to the other 3, if that makes sense.
Well, if we do a
if we do
temporary
temporary.
month
For June.
for June and then start them with their regular liquor license with everybody
July
else
1st.
July 1. Yeah.
Yep.
So the city council would have to prorate that to a 12th of, because a temporary
Which
liquor
is-
license only runs for.
110.
About
110 bucks for that,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that
$110
prorate of that 1 month deal.
for the
Yeah, that's
So-
the way that I took how you explained it.
That's
So you'd have
okay. It
2 liquor license.
You sold me on it.
I had it written down here, but
That's easy and clean.
Yeah,
So on the
ultimately-
handout, it would be the second to the last full paragraph. Describe, at the bottom, second to the last full paragraph. That prorated license 1 month for about 110, then a full licensure to go 7/1 through 6/30.
Yep.
Is that the consensus of the council then? So we
So
can-
they'll have to have 2 applications.
correct. I'll write up
Just
2
so you-
applications.
Mhm.
Let them know, hey, here's this one for this month.
That's easy.
And they're all ready to go on everything. And I already talked to Linnea about it, and they're on board because they're just requesting not to have to apply for a full year, even though they're using it 1 month. So they're asking for the permission of a 1 month, and
Yep.
then the full year
And then a
starting
full
in
year.
May. And knock on wood, everything's gonna go, and they're opening
Actually,
in
the
June.
full year will
so-
start in July then,
Yeah.
not in May. The
Right.
1 month would be for the month of June. The full one would be for the
July.
1 year,
Same
starting July
period.
1st, going through June 30th
Correct.
of 21.
21, yeah.
Is everybody clear?
Yep.
Good.
Okay, all right, that's,
So we'll bring that back as
Yep.
an actual
Yep.
on the consent agenda.
okay, sounds good. Any questions for Michael? Thank you. You can be heading north to your next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, do you wanna continue on
Yep.
with the communication?
The next one is just an FYI for you that we received a certificate of membership in the rural from the Minnesota Rural Water Association.
Okay.
It came to us, so I thought I'd stick it in so you see.
Mm-hmm.
Was that based on that water runoff that we had
Mhm.
supported?
No, this is
No.
no, this is
No.
not part of
Not
that. This
No.
has to do with our drinking water, the reports that come in.
In the city,
Right.
yeah, yep.
That's what this is. This is our drinking water.
Okay.
Doesn't cost us anything, just a membership that we received for our safe drinking water.
Neat. Okay, the Planning and Zoning Committee meetings, did you want us to review
And
those?
this is
or-
just for your information,
Okay.
because the city council has struggled, the city of Arlington has struggled with lack of communication. So I would like to put all the minutes in the council packets, and they don't necessarily need to be approved by city council, that's why I didn't put them on the consent agenda.
Mhm.
And it's not that we have to go over them,
Right,
it's that you guys read them and everybody knows what's happening with all the different committees.
I appreciate that more than
Okay.
you know.
Yep.
Very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Because it used to be the only ones that really had much clue at all were the committee members
Right.
on that committee. And the rest sometimes were a little bit in the dark.
well, they'd hear about it
Well-
during the little report.
Yeah, but
Right.
you
But it
got,
would be
you just
a-
got a tidbit of that.
Yeah,
Right.
just,
You
a-
couldn't
yep,
take a
just
half hour to go through
a very
And-
brief
everything
summary.
verbatim.
And these are approved minutes, so
Yeah.
the planning and zoning approved these minutes.
And what I like about this is that if I have a question regarding the EDA or the planning and zoning, out of these minutes, I can bring it up here and we can have a discussion about it. And I
Mhm.
think that's gonna be helpful to really get a handle on what's going on. I
Right.
appreciate this a lot.
Same thing with the EDA, the next one's the EDA minutes. It is for you guys to read so that even though you two are on the EDA, the other three are not, and
Mhm.
might not know what's going on.
Sometimes I don't know what's going on. I'm on the committee.
Well, then you can reread the minutes. Okay,
Board of Appeal,
this is from the county. I found it in my office when I started. So I wanted to get it on the agenda so that you know if it's April 23rd. This is for, it's the local Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting. It's the plan for April 23rd. Next month, the county will be here with their presentation on
oh, the
property.
assessor,
Yep, I mean, the assessor will be here next month
Okay.
with their, and next meeting with their presentation. March 16th, they'll be on the agenda. So I will probably put this on the agenda again, or just as a,
sure.
and just under the things to remember, dates to remember. Just so people know when it is.
Financial reports.
And in the past, the financial reports were typed up in that format that I presented at the last meeting. But actually through Banyan, I can run the revenue and expenditures so that you can see where we're sitting every month. I thought about running the February ones, but all the bills hadn't been paid, so it's not as accurate as you seeing the January ones right now, so we're always gonna be a little behind. But I just like to include this in the packet too, not necessarily to go over even every month, but I think it's also been part of our communication issues. You didn't know what was happening with the numbers. And this way gives you guys a chance to read through the budget numbers each month and see, and if you have questions, you might have questions after looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can ask myself or Lisa, and we can get answers.
I like the way this is laid out.
I
It's
do
very-
too, that's why I ran this, I'm like, I don't even have, last time, it
Yeah.
was these same numbers retyped into a spreadsheet, and I thought, why am I retyping these? I can just print it off of Banyan and save myself the
Sure.
time or the possibility of typing in the wrong numbers when you're,
Exactly, oh, yeah,
you know,
yeah,
this way it's just coming right out of Banyan, and you can see revenue and expenditures.
mm-hmm.
I think it'll help us when it comes to budgeting time too, to keep seeing the net, these are the numbers we're gonna be working with, so you'll keep seeing
Mhm.
where we sit.
Okay, any question from the council on anything contained on the financial report? Okay, if not, we'll move on. Item 8, reports, maintenance report, Kirby Weckworth, maintenance supervisor. Good evening, Kirby.
Good evening.
And also, we'll just include in your report or at the end of it, the bid for the sink.
Yeah,
We can
sure.
just discuss that
Yeah.
then too.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, basically last month we've been busy with street lighting, getting that lined up and getting Main Street completed last week. I called them back up today because I saw there's a handful of acorn lighting that is not lit. And I suspect it's the same, they were finding that some of these were not wired the way they needed to be, so they had to rewire them for our downtown lighting because they don't operate off of photo eye cells, they're all tied in to a timer. And they had 3 different guys working on it, so I hope it's just a couple wires that have to be flip-flopped. So they'll be back this week to fix that, and we should be good to go downtown, and we've started already swapping some out in residential as well, and weather looks really nice, so hopefully we can keep on that. Other than that, a couple big snowfalls that we took care of, a couple small ones that Mike and I took care of in-house. I'm working on truck bids to replace our pickup slash plow truck, 2001 Chevy. Wrapped up those sink bids for the kitchen, the prep sink bids. I think at my last report, I told you guys about FEMA, that we were told that what pretty much wasn't worth going on anymore. There was a misunderstanding with that. There was 2 separate projects. The road damage side of everything, that was the project that got kiboshed because it wasn't going to be worth all the extra contingencies they threw at us. However, there is still one more project going, which is the storm pipe collapse project. So there's 17 grand potentially still coming our way for that, without a lot of extra. I haven't been asked to supply anything else for that. So.
And where did that take place again? Where was the pipe collapse?
Oh, there was.
Or was it more than one?
4 or 5 different ones.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
I thought it was-
$17,000. The road damage was the big one. That was like 40,000.
Yeah.
But we were only at maximum going to get $3,000 back, and I've probably stuck that much time into it already. So, anyways, so I guess that's better news than what we thought. Time of the year to get trimming some boulevard trees. Mike has been able to get at some of that. Now with weather getting better, hopefully we can do more of that. Our walk-in fridge here at the community center broke down last week. Luckily we got that fixed before the fish fry. There was a bad cooling fan in it, and they added some refrigerant. Took down some bad parking lot signs uptown, some signs that didn't make sense for snow parking and seasonal parking. And then in talking with Amy, I ordered some new ones so everything can be consistent uptown and with how to park. Yeah, that's pretty much what's been going on. So.
Okay, any questions of Kirby on those items before we get to the discussion about the sink?
I have a question. Have we gotten a letter from Mike yet?
It was,
It was
we
on
must
the
have,
last,
it was in
it
the,
was on the
Okay.
last council
Paper.
agenda.
With the
Yep.
date?
yep.
Who? From Mike? Who?
Wilmson.
Oh, yeah, Mike's resignation,
Retirement.
in
Mhm.
retirement, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on that? Well, then let's move into the bids on the sink, kitchen sink.
I'd They all have the updated ones
They
in
do?
front of them.
Okay.
Yep.
I printed
We
them
have
out.
the-
Yeah.
They all have them in front
Um,
of them. If you wanna walk us through,
Sure. Is there a copy? Sorry.
he's got one.
Well, A&E Mechanical is obviously out. So it's between Reliable Plumbing and B&R. The drop-in sink, which would just be cutting into our existing countertop space
On the left-hand
on
side
the
of the
left-hand
stove.
side of the grill and the
Mhm.
so that's more costly for Reliable at $86.55, and then the prep table coffee maker is a couple $100 less. B&R is cheaper on both ends of it.
But
The only
B&R
warning I'm going to give you guys is B&R Plumbing was not comfortable with doing the drop-in sink at all because it included some welding, aluminum or stainless steel welding. So that's the only one I'd warn about. Other than that, in my mind right away, it made more sense just to do the drop-in sink because we're not moving things around and adding electrical. But obviously, the cheapest would be B&R Plumbing at $79.36 for the prep table and the coffee maker.
But
Moving
Kirby,
the
I
coffee
don't
maker.
see on the B&R plumbing, the reliable includes tile repair,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't see that on B&R. Would that be an additional?
Theirs were included in labor and
Oh,
materials.
So, go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, as far as what would make sense for somebody coming in and renting it as a commercial kitchen, would they prefer the sink in the drop sink area, or would they prefer the coffee maker actually moved and then having a prep table for that?
Yeah,
that's-
and I talked that through pretty good with Reliable because he seems to do a lot of kitchens up in the cities and stuff like that at restaurants, and the drop-in sink location makes more sense. I mean, everything's kind of right there. There's more counter space if you just turn around, and then your dish line is just down the way. And if we would put it where the coffee maker is, it's by the hallway door, and I don't know. You could justify either way, I think, but
Well, I'm
it
just,
just makes
what makes more
it's
sense?
funny to me
for-
to be moving things around and adding electrical when we don't need to, when everything is good yet on that end. But
Which is what you'd have to do if we go moving the coffee
if we
maker.
buy the table,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And then you're tearing more wall apart, and Tuckenhagen just gave me a rough estimate. He said $500, but nobody's sure how much once they start tearing into things.
So do they have to
It
open the wall up to get what? White, or,
They're gonna have to open the wall up to run some water lines. and
water
then
lines? All right.
Also for electrical.
And then knock some
And then they're
floor
gonna-
out to get
yeah,
the drain. in.
right.
Do they know where that drain line comes exactly? Did you find?
Reliable would camera it
Okay,
to make sure beforehand.
okay.
I don't think B&R was gonna do that. They're going off of somehow there was a I don't know.
So they found
At
plans.
the
Plans.
beginning of this, they had an idea
Yeah.
that it ran down the center of the floor, about 10 feet from the wall. So,
But Reliable was gonna televise it
yeah,
and camera it, okay.
right.
Okay,
This might be a little smarter.
yeah, before you start knocking floor up.
Well, when we get quotes like this, and here, I understand that anything can happen, but, I mean, that's their bid, so they're gonna get that job done for that amount of money, right? Even if something comes up, then they eat it,
Is it
right?
worded not to exceed?
Yeah, that would be the question.
Well, I would like to see it worded not to exceed,
Yeah,
period,
just bid, so.
and, yeah, And-
Several of, a lot of contractors will put that in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And then.
I'd
a
have
lot
to
of-
look at them again.
A lot of times if they happen to come under, you will get billed slightly under,
Mhm.
do some.
Yeah. No, I'd have to take a peek at those, I guess.
Did Reliable, I know they're $500 more, did they seem a little, I don't know how I wanna say this, more prepared, but more knowledgeable on the project, then my concerns are that we go with the cheapest one. And, well, we don't really know where the drain line is, but we'll find it when we break it up.
Yeah.
Well,
It was B&R's idea right away for the prep table. Reliable came in, NA&E Mechanical, and said, we'll just do a drop-in sink. And when I took this over, I thought, why are we moving things and all this other stuff? Why aren't we just cutting it into the sink and be done with it? But since we already had a bid from B&R for coffee maker, that move, I was asked to get bids for both, so.
So-
Well, it's $1,100 difference from the drop-in sink from one to the other. $1,172 difference.
totally,
And right, and 500 on the other one if
on
we're
the
gonna
other,
move the coffee maker. But if we feel like we're just gonna do the drop-in sink, cause it makes more sense, because there's more countertop space, and it just makes more sense if you're gonna rent a kitchen that it works better there. I mean, I would say we need to look at the contract and make sure that the contract states no more than their bid, the 74.83, and then,
Yeah.
I mean, that we're with B&R Plumbing.
And either location for the sink will meet state codes or
Yep.
state requirements?
Yep.
But you still have some reservations about B&R's welding of stainless steel,
Yes,
which would be
So do they.
necessary with the drop-in or with
with the drop-in.
the
yeah.
drop-in? Okay.
and that weld is gonna be visible, correct?
Mhm.
I mean, Reliable's bid here doesn't have anything that says, it's a lot of, it's a bid, it's an estimate, it's speculative. There's nothing that says, if we do this job and we find something, we're not gonna charge more. There's verbiage of could in here, could be scoped with camera beforehand. Well, if they're gonna scope it, are they gonna charge for that? I'm all for getting it done right the first time, even if that costs a little bit more, but without surprises.
A little bit more firm on the bid process.
Right.
Or is this our guaranteed price and is everything included?
Right.
No charges afterwards, additional.
Because if you're vouching that they seem the most confident to get the job done, then let's get them to say that we'll do it at this, with hopes that it comes in at what we're looking at right now.
Want me to make it bigger, Kirby? Do you wanna look at something?
I got it.
I mean, I would have to say that, I mean, did B&R say that they're not competent in their welding? Did they flat out tell you that? Why did they
Yeah.
bid the job then?
Because I asked for it to compare it, get a couple bids.
So then if their weld isn't that
Well,
good,
I
my
mean,
question is,
honestly,
Could
if
we
is
they're-
it gonna
there-
leak?
Can you put it back to theirs?
Well, they could subcontract that out
Well,
to say
yeah.
OEM or something if
Find
they.
somebody to come in and do the welding.
Well, and, right, and I mean, I guess, you know, for us to accept the work that they did, right? We have to accept the work that they do. When they complete it for us to pay them, they should probably know that the weld needs to be good, and if they can't do it, they need to find somebody else to do it. But, I mean, that's almost $1,200 savings from the other company.
But now, see, I'm looking at the B&R here, it says not responsible for boiler leaking because of stainless warping due to cutting hole for sink. I mean,
They're already
theirs is a
backed out.
contract, theirs says that we'll pay just that to get that job.
Yeah.
And there's some contingencies in there that says what they're not gonna be liable for. And again, to Kirby's point, you don't feel confident in B&R
Not for the drop-in.
for the drop-in,
Prep table will be fine.
but the prep table seems to be more,
It's doable.
Personally, I just don't like the location of that prep table well as opposed to.
I don't either.
the
No, I
drop-in.
didn't right away either, but
But a doorway where people are coming
Yeah.
in, going out, coming in,
I,
going out.
I think ultimately we're trying to satisfy
Yeah.
an OSHA requirement too. I mean, just to have a prep sink, there is that, keep in mind. I don't know how much it would really get used. People have been using the kitchen without one, but it would get used, I'm sure, but I mean, I'm just saying that's another angle to think about.
And if the purpose is to try to generate revenue by renting this out,
Correct.
you also want it to function well
Mhm.
as a kitchen,
Otherwise
right?
it'll,
So
word
if
will
you're,
get out that
if you're
it's
walking
not set
into
up well.
if you're walking into a table, that doesn't help with the flow of
Yeah.
kitchen work.
Do they make any mobile ones that maybe would have, like you would put fresh water in and it would have a spot that would capture the water to where you could then drain it out, so maybe we could just wheel it up, and use it as needed?
I don't
rather
know
than-
that that would.
I'm not sure if it,
Yeah, I don't think it would meet code, like standards.
I think it has to be tied into a line
Yeah.
somehow.
The nice with the sink is it's there,
yeah.
it's done,
Does it have to have
No
a
moving.
floor drain too?
Yeah.
permanent.
Yeah, it's gotta have a
It,
drain.
then it has to be
all that.
permanent.
Yep.
Well, if we do this, what are we gonna do in terms of advertising that we have a commercial kitchen? How do we make this worth it?
We
If
have
if
Henderson, the community school. We did- Maybe, unless they've found someplace else by now. We did put together a flyer a year or two ago before we found out that we couldn't rent it out. So there is something out there already, just needs to be updated with new contact information.
Would we
to
consider ramping up the advertising that we have this commercial kitchen? Because if we don't do
I-
anything, nobody's gonna know that it's there and it's,
We have $3,000 in the community center marketing budget. We've spent some money on the Mankato bridal show we went to, and we printed trifolds that advertise the community center. It doesn't say anything about the kitchen in that trifold, but I only ordered 250. So we could order another batch and include advertising that we have a commercial kitchen available and how much the cost for the commercial kitchen is, and get those out there. We really need to get that information out.
And what's the cost of the commercial kitchen?
$100 a day, I believe. I haven't looked at that in a while, don't quote me on that.
That sounds right.
Does that sound right to you?
Yeah.
It's been a while since I looked at it, but I think
With
it's
a
$100
discount
a
if you
day. It's a
have
discount if you rent it for,
For
Yeah,
a period of time.
yeah, a longer period of time like the school.
So what are caterers doing right now? When they come in and they cater an event?
I guess they're not
They're
not
making
preparing
do.
the food
They're
there.
making it
Mhm.
offsite.
They make it off-site and just bring it in.
Who's dishing it up and serving it?
They're just dishing it and serving it.
Do you think that would continue to be the case? Or do you think that they would use the kitchen caterers?
We did have somebody inquire about a birthday party or something they were having here, and they wanted to use the commercial kitchen. They wanted to bake the food in the kitchen for that event, but they can't yet because we're not a true commercial kitchen. But they were looking at it to do all the cooking for the party.
So what
So
can
we
we
could
do in
advertise.
there legally right now?
They can, basically, they're using it as that glorified station where you're handing out
yeah,
your
they're
food.
serving prepared food.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you can serve from there.
No
So they
scratch,
can't cook in there like
No
you would at the school
scratch
or
to finish product.
something. Yeah,
We can't do that.
you can't do that.
I'm wondering if we could reach out to people who are in the cottage food industry.
Right, there's people that bake bread and those, whoever, if they would wanna use it for the commercial kitchen or pies, breads, and they would want to sell, if they wanna sell to the public, this would be a commercial kitchen they could utilize and then start a business. That's what some communities do. I'm getting off track here, but some EDAs actually control the commercial kitchen and rent it out to kind of use it as an incubator space like we did downtown with Howard Brinkman's building. He doesn't want to put a commercial kitchen in there because he doesn't want to put a kitchen in that building to have those type of businesses. But we could market
It would
this.
certainly help for a startup, yeah.
For a
if you're-
startup
if you're
food.
making-
Well, and to the
Well,
catering
they're-
point, if you do have a kitchen that they can just bring all the prep two and then make it all there, that's probably easier by comparison to making it first and then
Hauling it.
Transporting.
Transporting it over.
How many
here.
caterers come in here besides Chef Craig? Do we have one or two other ones, or is it mainly
Oh, it
Chef
would be
Craig?
what's the one out on,
I've
think
seen
that's what I
Hans come
use.
in here from Winthrop.
Okay,
Okay.
out there by 212, what's that?
I think it's
Oh,
Souders.
Hillcrest?
Penny
Souders.
Hillcrest, Souders.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the one that I use.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those places maybe wouldn't use it, like Hillcrest is probably frying their food there.
At their
and-
own restaurant and bringing
Yeah.
it over.
And I'm assuming
I
even if
mean-
we did this, Chef Craig's gonna make his right across the street.
Right,
Of
he's
course,
not gonna
yeah.
be,
He's
he's not
gonna
gonna
be
use
using
our
it.
kitchen.
I'm trying to figure out how many people are gonna use this.
Right, that's
Before we
my
spend 8
point.
grand.
Yeah.
Is it, I understand we could maybe get some more, but at $100 a time, we gotta get 86 of them just to get our money back.
Is there any way that we can reach out to Henderson schools and see
Yeah.
if they are still interested?
Last
if
time
they-
I reached out to them a couple of months ago, a month ago, and then they said they were waiting to see what we did.
Well,
think
So,
I
I
was-
mean, I would
Get a
say
little
that,
more of a
I mean,
commitment from him?
if I were to get a commitment from them, I would go ahead with it.
In a heartbeat.
But if we can't get a commitment from them, then
We
I
gotta
don't.
lock, we gotta lock
that's-
the ovens up, from what I'm hearing. So,
You
and
shouldn't
Well,
be
I was,
using
again,
it
then we're
without,
just sitting
Yeah,
with
so
a
I
dead
mean, I-
kitchen.
Then we're just
that
sitting with a
can't
dead
do
kitchen.
anything.
yeah, so
I mean,
essentially,
Correct.
if we
All
don't
we can
do
do is what
it,
we're doing now.
Right.
then you
gotta-
can't use the kitchen.
we've gotta close the ovens off. They
You
can't
shouldn't
use
be
them.
using the kitchen.
I mean, that's what it
Why,
comes down to.
you can't bring your stuff here and keep it in
You
there?
can heat it up.
That's-
You can heat it,
that's
reheat
what
it.
You can
from-
reheat it here.
If you've cooked
You
it
just
somewhere
can't
else.
start from scratch and go to finish.
Right, so.
You can't
You
cook
can't do that.
from scratch.
But
They
can
can
keep it
reheat, they
warm.
can't physically cook the whole product.
Right, and I've seen
beginning
that,
to
I've seen
end.
people bring in sandwiches that they've reheated in our oven.
That's my only concern. I
Then I
want
would say, yeah, it's not a very wise, it's potentially not a very good investment
No,
if
I'd
we
wanna,
know that
I'd
they're
wanna
not
hear
going
from.
to.
A commitment. from
Henderson.
A commitment from,
Henderson.
yeah,
Yeah.
commitment from Henderson and a plan to actually advertise that so that we can generate some
Yep.
interest.
because if Henderson's interested, and we know they'll be here 2-3 years, we should
So-
recoup at least our expense.
Right. Could we also see how many times the kitchen was rented out over the last year and a half, whatever? As far as how, I mean, if we can get information, I don't know what kind of records we have, but,
I'm not sure if we have great records on how many times the kitchen was rented, I'll be honest, I might not have much money there, but.
Matt Nelson, you had something to say?
Yeah, there's another marketing aspect to this that my family or my wife's family every year does cookie bake. A lot of people do their Christmas cookie bakes. I know I'd spend $100 to have them come here instead of my house. You know,
But would 40 people do
Do
that?
they get the
Exactly.
space?
That's
though,
our concern.
Or is it
But
just
it's a
the oven?
community kitchen to where
You get the
you-
whole
you-
kitchen
you-
for
you-
$100.
you
Just-
get the
but
whole
Excuse me,
not
kitchen
the-
for
Matt's
$100
talking.
on there. There's another marketing aspect to it besides if you get the contract, so you mentioned Henderson and stuff. But there's people that have rented just to be able to have a larger kitchen than what they have at home.
Okay, good point.
And I actually know someone who is looking for an opportunity to teach people big batch cooking. So on a weekend, people come in, you have the ingredients available and everyone does big
Mhm.
batch stuff that then is frozen for the entire week. So they already have, food prepped. So that would be an option to reach out to that person and see if she'd be interested in doing that here.
Now, to Joe's point though, it's $100 just for the kitchen.
Correct.
How much for the room?
If you want $240 for the big one, for room one it's $180. So if they wanna,
So,
but maybe they just wanna use the kitchen.
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
they're
they
gonna
might
start
wanna
their
use the
own
kitchen and
business.
Yeah,
They
it's
won't
a
want-
different story if they're gonna rent the kitchen and use the,
so,
one of the
Mhm.
rooms.
so an additional 180 to rent the room, so it'd be
Right, but-
280
Room
then
one,
for
mhm.
the one, the
If they would
smallest.
rent the one by the kitchen.
Right, the
it's
smallest
180.
segment there.
I was just kind of trying to clarify to make sure it wasn't,
Mhm.
if you paid 100 and you got all of it, well, then that's really,
No, you don't
No.
get the whole works.
yeah.
Just the kitchen only.
Just the kitchen for $100.
But when you do get that kitchen up to code, then that also wraps into the marketing for the rooms. You're
Right,
appealing
it-
to
Oh, sure.
caterers,
Yep,
to,
yep.
as well as those that wanna have events here, who then can also go to their caterer and say, the kitchen's all ready for you.
Mm-hmm.
you know, potentially you can open it up to additional caterers that typically do not cater here as well.
Right. they could be from out of the area and they could actually use the kitchen.
What stand did the community center committee take on this? I'm trying to think back to a recent meeting. Did they
I left really early
authorize
from
it?
that meeting.
Yeah, I think I left right after you.
Yeah, I don't think we, or I shouldn't say we, I don't think that it was like authorized, it was discussed.
Could we maybe wait until the next, in the meantime, before the next community center meeting? If we don't wanna wait that long though, maybe.
I'd like to see the numbers.
Yeah,
I mean, if we can see the numbers on,
and get a commitment from Henderson,
Yep.
hopefully.
and
A
yeah,
commitment
talk to
from Henderson.
Henderson.
Yeah. And tell them the commitment, we're hinging on their commitment. Either we'd look more favorably upon it if they're willing to.
I would've thought they would've made a move already on it as long as it was.
Well, they could
after
have,
this.
and we don't even know.
They might have now
Yeah.
chosen.
And that would be, investment-wise, one of our biggest returns that we just lost.
But yet they had Hilltop Elementary School is where they were making it before, and that's,
They
weren't
were
they?
No, their
catering.
meals
Oh,
were
I'm
being
sorry.
catered by, the Belle
Oh,
Plaine
they're
restaurant.
being catered. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so, I can't remember the name of the restaurant, but they were
All
delivering
right,
food
all
in.
right.
And one of their goals is to be able to prepare more healthful meals for the students, which is why they're looking for kitchen
Okay.
space.
So they don't have a kitchen.
They have a kitchen, but you can't really prepare anything in it. It's not a commercial kitchen.
It's-
Just like ours.
So they
Well,
can
like the
serve, it's like
Ours.
ours, right, they can serve prepared food,
Right.
but they can't make food.
Okay,
Okay, so I'll see if I can get a commitment. I know there's not gonna be a lot of information. I'll wheel check it, but I can tell you, there won't be a lot of information on how many people have rented the kitchen.
Do we have, is this in part of our budget for the community center?
Yes, it was budgeted. It was in the budget to upgrade that sink. Or to
Or
put a
like
sink
what
in.
kind
Yeah, how
of money
much?
is? I mean,
If you
is
have
the
a
budget
minute, I can.
less
If it was
than,
that
Probably.
much, then
for
it's
some reason
kind
I
of
was
a
thinking it
no-brainer.
was.
It was like 2,000 or something.
Yeah, I was thinking
Just that?
Yeah, I
Really?
didn't
No,
know it was that big.
I-
Two, 3,000 bucks brings a bell.
Yeah,
No, I
that's
think
what's
it was
coming to my
more
mind.
than that. I think it was more than that budgeted, but. $3,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
3,000 was in the budget for it.
Okay,
so this over doubles it.
Mm-hmm.
Is there other money available in the community center fund that's budgeted, that's not gonna be spent towards maybe, or that we can take away from one area to? I mean, if there's 3,000 in advertising, I see, I mean, but we don't wanna take away.
we don't wanna
No,
take.
We're
away
gonna
from
do
that.
You
this,
gotta
we
don't wanna
advertise it.
take
we don't
away
wanna
from
take away the
that.
advertising,
We're
I
gonna take
know,
away
right,
that,
so
let's
I
just
mean,
quit right
I'm
now.
just
Not
trying,
cheap.
I seen that really quick, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else.
Well, this one here, last year, hold on, let me see if I can make this so we can see the whole. I'm looking at, the safety program and equipment. In 2018, the actual was only $785. We budgeted 3,000.
So there might be a couple
See what
thousand.
so there might be money here.
But is sprinklers and such maybe,
Yeah, that's
A
gonna be,
thing.
that's
Yeah,
coming too.
that's maybe gonna come out of
That's
that
gonna be a
line?
big bill.
Maybe
Kirby, what was the number on sprinkler system replacement?
It's
in
looking
here?
like it's probably 20 to 30 grand,
Yep.
something like that, or
Replacement.
somewhere
Would that have
between
been part of the capital improvement budget?
I think we're looking for that next year, aren't we?
Yeah, it wasn't.
That
it
would be
wasn't
for
this
next year.
I wasn't
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
Was-
right below that last one you looked at. It said sink repair.
Hold on. I flew by it.
6 lines above the highlighted yellow.
Yep.
1 column to the right.
Repair, maintenance, buildings.
Food prep sink.
Preparation sink,
There's
5,000.
5,000.
So we have 8,000 if he's got, cause he has kitchen
Oh.
sink, we have kitchen sink and we have food prep sink.
Remember the library?
Oh,
So we
yeah.
actually have
Oh,
8
right.
right?
Problem
It's
solved.
like our sink's budgeted.
Gosh.
Looks like we do have the money for the sink, cause it's in there twice.
Well, that being
Well, this
said,
is-
then,
Well, now we do
This
have.
We still gotta do our legwork.
can we
Yeah,
still
but
at
it's
least?
$5,000 in the 2020
He must.
budget.
We're still a little short, but I mean,
A
not-
little short, but
Not
$700
by much.
Not
Well,
by
now
much
with the
now.
B&R,
Right.
Yeah.
B&R, we get her done.
Yeah, that's manageable.
True, B&R would be.
I mean, I don't know if they would be willing to subcontract the welding to, say, OEM or something to maybe even the cutting of the hole and the welding to.
But that might drive their bid up then too.
Yeah.
to-
Right.
I'm
Well,
sure.
they would have had their hours in it, so they'd be taking away that to give it to somebody
Of
else.
course, that's sort of up to them to how they want to get it
Yeah,
done, get it done to our
essentially
satisfaction.
But if we've
Yeah.
got 8,000, Reliable's not far off of that.
Right.
No.
Sounds like
It's
Kirby,
only
you sound pretty confident with that?
$655.
At
Yeah.
least with Reliable, it's a
You do it.
one-stop shop. You
Mhm.
got
It's
them coming
done.
in to do the job.
Mhm.
It's
They got the
gonna be
people
done
to do
right.
it
right,
correctly.
but
They were
Or at least
saying
we
that
think
if it's
so.
warped, it's our problem. And I mean, silicone's gonna fill the gaps.
I mean, the sink, yeah,
well,
but
that was B&R's
That
that
was
was
B&R.
saying that.
Oh, I thought that.
No, that
you
was
were saying that
B&R's.
was Reliable.
And again, that's why
B&R.
Reliables at least didn't have the verbiage that said this is what we'll do. Period.
Yeah.
There's still some terms in there that doesn't tell me that it's a firm. So, what are we talking here then? We still want commitment from Henderson.
Before moving forward.
or at least some idea that we're
that
still
they're
in the game.
interested, right?
I think they're.
I
I think
would-
they're long gone.
I
So
would
if
like-
they, I was gonna say, if I reach out to them and they say, we're not really interested anymore, do we want this back on the agenda, or?
I think so. I would like to see in the bid that not to exceed. And if I can see that in the bid, then I would probably be comfortable with that Reliable plumbing bid. But if I don't see that in there, then we're already going over $700 over our budget. I don't wanna end up going.
Kirby, the items for tile repair, Jeff Matz, and wall repair, Tuchtenhagen, is that something you penciled in?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, unless they are willing to say we'd do it for that, not to exceed.
Well, you could, just throwing it out there, council could approve it on the condition not to exceed $86.55. Kirby goes back to him and says, council approved it, not to exceed $86.55. The city won't pay anything over that.
See, Tuchtenhagen and Matz, they can't know what their bill's going to be
No.
until they see how much wall is damaged
Yeah.
and how much tile has to be repaired, and they don't know until one of the two contractors has busted up the concrete or tile they're going to, and the holes in the walls. They could get in the wall and say, oh, we gotta go 3 feet further to get to something. Well, now we really increase the sheetrock repair.
But then what I would like to see is Reliable come in and say, this is how much I'm gonna charge you regardless of what I do, period.
Yeah, so
Right.
Reliable could be
So
the main,
the main contractor,
That's
yeah.
the biggest bulk
They
of
would
it too,
hire-
Yeah,
right?
and
They're the
So-
ones we're hiring,
Yes.
whatever the other
But
costs.
I'm just
they-
saying, we
That's
can't
not
tie
it. That's on
Tuchtenhagen or
them.
Matz to that 500 or 600.
Yep, but we're not paying Matson, we're not paying Tittenhagen, we're paying Reliable for the
for
job.
the whole thing, if they're willing to
And
take
then
on
they're
that.
subcontracting
They
their other people.
subcontract.
But Reliables, the
Reliable.
500 and 600,
They
did
can
Reliable
break it
put
up
that in,
however-
or we
No.
did?
Kirby
We
put
break it
that
up
in.
however.
We added that in as an additional city expense, correct?
So we would be paying Reliable $75.55, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't
Reliable.
take care
These
of
two are
paying.
separate. Yeah.
Those
That's
two
why
are
I say,
separate.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but
Tuchtenhagen and Matz, if they're over, we aren't going to Reliable for that.
I think what Michelle was referring to is that we approach Reliable and say, hey, look, we want you to head the whole project. These were the two other contractors that I had bid it. Whether you choose to do that with them or not, I have approved $86.55 to do this project. If you can get it done for that, then we move forward. You had the project done. Then you're not working with 3 different
We're not,
contractors. They
yeah.
are.
we're not paying Tittenhagen, we're not paying Matson, we're not
Exactly.
paying anybody else, we're paying one contractor to do the project.
And they would take full responsibility
And,
then.
yeah, and whoever they get, I mean, maybe they don't get Tittenhagen, maybe they get somebody else. I don't know, maybe they use them. I don't know, I don't care who they use, just as long as the price comes in at
And the job is
865,
Yeah, that's what
acceptable.
I'm
and the job
saying
is
too, is to
acceptable.
keep
They
it
have the
pure.
biggest share of it. Yeah.
Right.
His initial bid said that the wall and tile repair I mean, he didn't include that, like, that was gonna be on us to figure that out. But now you want me to go back and tell him to add that in, or
Well,
what?
does he have does Reliable use contractors for those types of jobs? And if so, would they also
I would
be
assume
in
so,
that
but I
$1,100
don't know,
range
he didn't
for both?
include that in the first one, but.
Well, we gotta figure out first and foremost if we're even gonna do it.
Well, we do have some budget for it. So we basically set that money aside to do it. The return on it is maybe negotiable, whether or not it's actually there or not.
Might
but
be years before you.
yeah, it's probably just the right thing to do.
Just the truth, yeah.
To move on and enjoy our commercial kitchen for what it is. I would have, I'm somewhat skeptical about whether or not people would actually be cooking in there or not, and how do you control that, right?
You
Well,
can't.
oh no, that's raw. You can only warm. How do you separate that?
But it does give us more options,
It
it's
does
in
give us
there
more
and we've got the
marketing.
money in the budget, it does give us more options, but
I like the idea of putting it in, since we have money in the budget for it, right? But I just want it to be simple.
Since
I
you have
and I don't
two
wanna go
spaces.
over, I don't want any surprises, right?
Well, and I wanna know that we're actually going to, advertise it and not just sit on it.
Right.
Because if we do all of this and then we just sit on it, what was the point? If we can somehow drum up additional business, then in my mind, it's more worth it.
I think if either one of these contractors, either Reliable or B&R Plumbing, take on the whole project, that might, encourage them maybe to be very careful when they
Knock it out.
knock
yeah.
it out,
They come in.
right? Because if they just are like, whatever,
Yeah, we're not
and then the rest of
responsible
it's on, the rest of it's on us. Not saying that they would do that, I'm just saying things happen though.
We're at a point where we either make a decision to move ahead with one or the other of the two bids, or table it and wait for some more facts, background to make our decision at next meeting.
I'd really like to table it and let's get more information.
Did you make that into motion?
I'll make it into a motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Councilmember Hattlestead, second by Councilmember Gilman, to table the decision on the prep sink, or I should say the sink improvement in the community center kitchen. And I would think until next meeting would be sufficient, but we're tabling it anyhow.
And I will check with the Henderson School, see if they still want it, let them know the situation, and check on, see if I can get any information on past rentals. Kirby is to contact the contractor and see if he can get it basically set in stone, not to
Yeah.
exceed.
Not to exceed, I think that's the way the council would
For the
prefer it.
complete,
For the complete job.
Complete
Not to
job.
exceed on his price though, or the
No,
86.55.
The total of
86.55.
$86.55.
Okay.
so they would be the contractor
Yeah,
for
they
them
would
They would
contract
sub
with,
out to whoever they want to for them other two pieces.
but we pay one.
But we pay one person, not to exceed.
On the Henderson thing, not to drag this out, would anybody support sort of a negotiation tactic to try to get them? Maybe we gave them, if they signed a contract for 3 months, we give them, 2-3 weeks free essentially
I
to
think
get started.
When we did speak with them, we kinda left it open that we would negotiate with them on the price,
Yeah.
if they would do
Yeah.
it longer, so.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to table this. Any more discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries and the item is tabled till the next meeting. Anything else for Kirby? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move on to resolution 15-2020, a resolution authorizing submittal of the USDA Rural Development Community Facility Grant. That is a long title.
Sorry. That's what it is.
Yep.
This is for the fire department turnout gear. John had spoke about this. This needs to be replaced this year, and they don't have a choice. It has to be replaced every, I think it's 10 years. Does it say 10 years is sticking in my mind? John told us
10 or 15.
a certain number of years, and
Okay, so
so
I
we
read that
have to
today.
pay to replace this. That's why I heard about this grant, we might as well apply for it. It sounds like if we apply, we'll get something. Not necessarily the amount I am asking for, but knowing if we put it closer to a 50-50 split, hopefully we'll get the amount I'm asking for. But something is better than nothing towards paying for this turnout gear.
Very expensive. I'll introduce resolution 1520 or 15-2020, authorizing the submittal for the USDA Rural Development Grant pre-application.
Second.
Resolution 15-2020, introduced by Councilmember Batchor, second by Councilmember Hattlestead. And that resolution is authorizing a submittal for the USDA Rural Development Grant pre-application. And that's for the turnout gear for the Arlington Fire Department. Is there further discussion?
Turnout gear is every 10-year replacement.
10 years.
10
Okay,
years,
I knew it
so
was
we
in
were
there somewhere,
right. That was
yeah.
to say it's stuck in.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, vote by roll call. Councilmember Morgan.
Yes.
Councilmember Batchor.
Yes.
Councilmember Omeright.
Yes.
Councilmember Hattlestead.
Yes.
And Councilmember Gilman.
Yes.
All council members in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. All right, then on to item 11, ambulance meeting update or ambulance program update.
There's been I've heard a lot of concern about the dispatching issues with the ambulance. This weekend I spoke to the Sibley County Sheriff about the dispatching issues. And he told me that a day or two before we spoke this weekend, he had spoken with Darryl Roddy about using what's called the Fire EMS channel that was available for use. Darryl Roddy said that he would bring it to the Ridgeview group to discuss on March 10th. That's a Ridgeview internal meeting. None of us will be there. The sheriff's office will not be there. Some of the concern with just using the Ridgeview channel, why the sheriff's office doesn't necessarily want to get on there, because you can hear all the chitter chatter and traffic from LeSueur and Belle Plaine, and the sheriff's office doesn't necessarily want to hear all that. Also, there's been issues with transporting. When Ridgeview goes to transport somebody, they keep sending out pages till someone answers it for a transport. So that's the update on dispatching after talking to the sheriff's office.
Is it not an option to go back to how we had been dispatching? I think that's the,
I would like to recommend that we have Sibley County dispatch
If we're
how
going,
it was, and then just, I understand that it's complex schedule now. We don't know who's on, when they're on. Well, we kinda do, but sometimes we don't know, 5 minutes before. But it'll be either everybody in the ambulance group gets the page, no matter what city you live in, no matter what city that's coming out of, to make it easier on Sibley County for them to even think about taking it back, right?
well, the sheriff's office won't do the dispatching for transport like they want it to happen now, because the sheriff's office won't take the time to keep sending out that dispatch, trying to find someone who's available to do the transport.
So the old way is not an option?
Not an option right now. At least that's what I understood. It's not an option right now under this joint agreement. While we're doing this joint agreement, it's not gonna work.
Now, is someone from dispatch coming to the next JPA meeting so that they can explain their thinking on this to the group?
I mean, from the dispatch that is being used right now?
Well, someone from Sibley County.
From Sibley
From the
County?
sheriff's
Okay.
office,
Yeah.
we can invite them to the March 19th.
I think it would be helpful for them to be able to explain that.
Well, I guess I don't understand why we can't just go ahead and have them dispatch how they did before.
that's
I
the-
mean, period.
we dispatched before. There was transfers. I mean, that's how the ambulance is making money, is because of the transfers. So clearly in the past we have dispatched. Now
Obviously,
maybe it's a fear of doing a bigger area or something. I don't know.
But they did both before.
Yeah.
So they did Gaylord and they did Arlington ambulance before. Okay, so the difference is,
Bob actually knows something about this.
Inform us, Bob.
Yeah, Bob Luth, Arlington Ambulance. The reason we can't go back to the way it was before is because Gaylord's pagers are set up differently than Arlington's. A lot of these issues that have Amy has brought up, Ridgeview has been working on. The transfer paging system they use by text, they send out a text, all texts to both communities or both services, and they reply back to Ridgeview saying, yes, you know, I can take this, or no, I can't. So as soon as they get two people who say they can take this transfer beyond the 30-mile limit that we have, then those two people are taking that transfer. If it is something, a transfer that can wait longer than 30 minutes, I believe Ridgeview will send a truck out of their core, which would be their main service area, down to take that transfer. So, there's
question. So with that being said, are we losing transfers then? Or is Ridgeview taking transfers when we could potentially take those transfers?
if we can get the crews, yes.
But Gaylord is
But-
choosing not to
But
do
Gaylord,
transfers.
Gaylord is choosing not to take transfers that would last, say, if the transfer had to go to Abbott, Hennepin, North, a Gaylord crew, on-call crew would not take that transfer.
How do they get to say that? I mean, if it's a joint venture, you sign up as a group and you fully partake in all aspects of it.
You know, those are issues we're trying to deal with.
Yeah, I mean,
It's-
from the fire department, they're on site on maybe an accident or something, and that communication is just so important. They're the other part of this scenario.
And we have SB channels that we can talk to the fire department on an accident scene. And we do use an SB channel, which is it's on everybody's radio. That's what we use to talk to fire. You know, the whole paging issue, fire and ambulance are separate.
So the scenario that I don't remember the gentleman that had brought it up, but there was two of them that actually had basically said they hear the 911 caller talking to the sometimes the person who called, or there was instances where they just don't know whether or not, where's the truck coming from, where's the ambulance, when's it going to be here. That was repeated over and over again.
I guess I don't
For
understand.
For fire.
For
Yeah.
fire.
So for fire responding and waiting for an ambulance and not knowing when it was actually going to be there.
Fire only, if it's a motor vehicle, fire, there are some instances, and Sibley County has been very lax in a lot of these, but there are certain instances where fire and ambulance are to be auto-paged. Motor vehicle accidents, cardiacs, strokes, one other one, but those are the times when fire and ambulance gets paged simultaneously. Okay. Otherwise, if it's a regular 911 call for the ambulance, fire does not get paged. So the ambulance is the only group that's responding. Now, if ambulance gets on site and realizes or understands that they need fire's assistance for something, then the ambulance would get on the Sibley County Fire and EMS channel, tell dispatch that please page Arlington Fire to respond to this address and this call. That's how we have it set up. And that's how it's been for years in the past, is, you know, if the ambulance needs fire, they will get a hold of Sibley County and have them page fire.
Is that working the same now or not?
Yes. We haven't had to use fire since we've started this trial period in January.
So what's changed?
That Ridgeview is doing our dispatch. When a 911 call comes into Sibley County Dispatch, that call gets transferred to Ridgeview's dispatchers in Waconia. One of the dispatchers will take the 911 call and talk to the person on the other end who called in. They will do what they call a pre-arrival. They will talk to this person, get all the information that is needed. If there are anything that needs to be done, say if it's someone who is in cardiac arrest or bleeding, they will instruct that person or ask them, are they willing to do CPR on this person, and they will give them instructions on how to do that. In the meantime, the other person working in that room will page either Arlington or Gaylord, either 270 or 370, to respond to such and such address for, say, a cardiac, and if it is a cardiac, they will say pre-arrival is in progress, which tells us that someone is still talking to the person who called 911. When the ambulance people get down to the garage, they call en route. At that time, the dispatcher will tell them what they have, where they have it at, and any additional information that they have gleaned from the person in between the original page and when they got down to the truck. That is something we are not getting now with Sibley County. The majority of our calls, when we get them to go out, are either unknown medical or, you know, person bleeding, or, you know, I'd say a good 70% of our calls prior to Ridgeview taking over the dispatching, we never knew what we were going into. So, that's how it's set up. So the deal with fire saying they're concerned about what they're going to, you know, they're not getting...
Or whether or not a truck is coming, when it's gonna be there. We stood in front of them for an hour, and at the end of it, the number one thing, and what would alleviate, in my opinion, 95% of the disconnect between this this JPA was going back to the original way that the dispatch was done.
Or finding a solution so
or
that the
find-
communication was improved. So I think either
Yeah.
of those
But
options
I
would be.
guess I'm confused a little bit as to where they're getting this, where this truck is coming from, and why are they being paged, you know, before
So in
us?
a couple of those scenarios, they were already there, and had radioed back and basically didn't get much of a response. They didn't know whether the truck was on its way, what town is it in, when's it actually going to be there.
There was one instance before we started this trial period that we run into a situation like that, but not since.
Chief
The
Pedersen, did you have something
feedback
you
was-
wanted to interject?
If I could, Bob,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt, but
No.
in addition to what Bob just explained, when that 911 call comes in, and we just had one today, Sibley County Dispatch also gets on the radio and they dispatch a local law enforcement to the medicals. And they would do the same if it was a fire. So what'll happen is 911 comes in, Sibley answers it, Sibley County to 300 cars, which was Arlington. We've got a medical at 803 West Main Street. That way I know, respond.
Mhm.
Then the next thing that happens is Ridgeview gets it, and then what Bob explained. So we do get paged out by Sibley County, and that was a request from myself and chief from Gaylord as this JPA came into effect and the dispatch changed. So Sibley County is more than willing to try and adjust to make this a little bit more successful, but it has been a huge benefit for Ridgeview being able to get those details, because then we can also monitor Ridgeview. They can talk on the fire EMS channel, and they can also let us know if there's anything further that we might need to know.
So it sounds like there are solutions, and this can be potentially workable for everyone, but it also sounds like it would really be a benefit for all of you who know this stuff to sit down with each other and get it figured out, instead of telling us,
Yeah.
you know.
We appreciate your telling us, but
Yeah,
we aren't the people that can solve the problem. So,
Yeah, I gotta believe there's a solution to this. If they're letting the police, there's gotta be a solution to make
It sounds like Ridgeview is the better dispatcher at this point. Is that accurate? Better than Sibley County?
Yes, because
Okay.
they're all trained emergency medical dispatchers, where Sibley County is not.
But we
So-
need to make this work for fire too.
Right.
So if they get this other channel, everything should be fine, or not?
So, and that's what so once the JPA goes, if it goes through or whatever, okay, Ridgeview can reprogram the fires,
Fire would have.
right? But that would cost
There's a
That's
cost.
there's
$1,000
it's
or
a
something
pretty
like
heavy
that.
cost.
What I had
To have
heard
those
was that it was
programs.
already
Cost associated with that.
reprogrammed somehow. No.
Fires were not, ours have been.
Yours has.
Ambulance has been.
Ambulance was. So fire has not, so it would be an
Mhm.
additional cost to have fire be programmed, and then once fire is programmed, then they'll get that communication from,
But you'll also
From-
hear that chatter from LeSueur.
From LeSueur and
Belle
Belle
Plaine.
Plaine.
And that's what fire doesn't want.
Well, the sheriff's office didn't want that either.
Well, I mean, again, the feedback was they had something done to them that they did not want nor like the way that it's happening. So when you have that happen to you, you're not as open to, you know, the whole test or scenario. So coming together, coming up with something that fits everyone is in the best of everybody would help
No.
the.
Fire dispatching hasn't changed. It's the ambulance side of it. that
There,
has
I think there
changed.
was 25 people in the room, and it was the number one topic. And so the way I explained it to them was that the night before, that ambulance was 100%. The folks that were here were on board with this JPA.
Mhm.
I think it was the very next day we go to the ambulance, and it was just the opposite.
you go to the fire.
Or fire. We go to the fire. Other than, I think there was 2 individuals that are actually on the ambulance, and very thankful that they were, because they did bring up some very valid, you know, information and shared that with, you know, their co-firefighters. Yeah, it's they feel they felt very strongly that was the case. There was a lot of issues.
They're not, so
It's
their
dispatch.
concern is they're not getting the ambulance pages.
They're not able to hear what's going on over the radio.
Yeah, they feel that
Why-
communication
Can
is
you explain
compromised.
it? I mean, do we have it, or is there
Joe's
something
doing a
more?
pretty good job. I'm not here to represent the fire
No,
department.
I
but
know.
My information from the meeting, other than what Joe's already shared, is that when the fire department is at scene, we do not know when the ambulance is getting there. We
Okay,
have no communication with Ridgeview on when they're coming.
okay. Then we need, at that time, when it's a joint, venture like that, we need, both ambulance and fire need to talk to Sibley County and set up the SB channel that we can talk to each other on.
That's what the discussion
And then
is.
you can let
Yeah.
them know when you're en
And
route.
then we can let
It's
them
that-
know, we
It's
can,
that simple.
we can talk to them, they can talk to us. We do it with Green Isle when we respond over to Green Isle. They give us an SB channel, we switch to that SB channel, and then we can talk to Green Isle Fire can talk to us. It's the same thing that could be
That
done
alleviates that chatter.
Yeah.
with that
And that
chatter.
eliminates
County
that.
dispatcher
It's that easy.
isn't relaying that information because it's going through Ridgeview.
To date, right?
To
Correct.
date,
Right.
But that can come from our ambulance service to to our fire department, eliminate the chatter and eliminate them out of the situation. At least that part of it.
So this sounds like something that Sarah and John can all come together and figure out a plan and
Affirmative.
disseminate it to the
I think
various
so,
groups,
yes.
right?
I think so.
Well,
I
just
think
a
so.
reminder, Bridgeview is gonna meet on March 10th to talk about using this fire EMS channel.
That's
What's that?
A week from today.
a week from today, and that's at our monthly ambulance meeting. Daryl is coming down to discuss this whole
This other-
dispatching thing with
okay.
us.
So is it talking about the SB channel and how to use
No,
it?
talking
or is
about a
it-
different, it's called the fire EMS channel.
It's the Sibley County channel. It's what, basically what that channel is how can we use the old channel through Sibley County without going through Ridgeview Dispatch.
So changing it. So
Yes.
taking it. So then reprogramming all your radios.
Well, we
again.
don't know, I mean, it's, we're gonna have to look at this and,
Yeah, it's just important to get that, to get the buy-in, or have the folks that are affected by it there and able to, discuss the pros and cons. And, if John was there and as the chief on the fire, if it's something he supports, then he can go back to his team and talk, and his input to the fire department is more value than anybody's in this room.
Absolutely.
Right.
And it would be a game changer towards, if the JPA is a success in the end, and it ended up going that way, having everybody supportive of it would be better in the end.
Well, it's the only way it's gonna work.
Right.
It sounds like the only way that it's gonna get supported is if there is efficient communication between all parties involved during calls. Not necessarily now when we're trying to decide, it's when it's happening is where the miscommunication lies. Cause fire doesn't know if an ambulance is coming when they're on site. But if we can get Ridgeview to communicate to Sibley, or if we can get a channel between ambulance and fire after Ridgeview's done their part to dispatch ambulance, so then ambulance can talk to fire and say, we're on our way. That's it, right? Then
Sounds
the
like
loop's
the key.
tied. So,
Because I think we somewhat agree that it's beneficial to have the quality of dispatching out of Ridgeview that we're getting with two people, both know medical. They can talk people through things and keep everybody
and
calm.
that'll also alleviate fire from getting on that Ridgeview channel and hearing the chatter then, correct?
yes.
Then that's what we do.
That's what we do.
Should resolve our issue.
It should, yeah. And I know it had been discussed a while back when we, in one of, well, I'd say November-ish, we talked a little bit about the radio, and how would Ridgeview be doing our dispatch, or would it be coming out of Sibley County? And it was all kind of hinged, on how we're gonna talk to each other on what Sibley County said, and being they said they didn't wanna dispatch, for the proposed JPA, well then we went the route we did, and, the SB channel was discussed at that time.
But it hasn't been utilized.
It hasn't, because we really haven't had to, because there hasn't been any calls where fire and ambulance have been dispatched at the same time.
Since the JPA.
Since the beginning of the year.
Since the beginning of January,
But-
since the beginning of the year.
Sooner or later, there probably will be one maybe.
Yeah,
Right. Well, I mean, the
it
true test will
benefits to
come,
have
yeah.
a plan in
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
know
Right.
That's why I
exactly
say
what
sooner
needs
or
to
later
happen,
it's
when
gonna
it needs to
happen.
Right.
Might be 6 months, might be.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean,
Tonight.
if that's the plan, that's the plan, and then we roll with it or
Yep.
whatever, then
We
that's
just gotta
done or
go through
whatever,
and get
right?
that figured
If
out.
it works, but maybe testing it. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys
Yeah.
everybody gets test pagers or whatever every
I think it
night.
starts with a conversation.
Well,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and then testing.
And testing,
And
to
testing
be
see if it
prepared
works.
for that
Mock
one time
tests.
when
Right,
it does happen.
yeah.
there's really nothing with the pagers or anything that we can test with that. It's all on the radio, so it's a matter of setting up a protocol where if Sibley County dispatches either 270 or 370 for either, and Arlington Fire and Gaylord Fire are involved, say it's at night in Gaylord, then 270 and Gaylord Fire would be dispatched, and Sibley County, and we can talk to Daryl. Sibley County would have to let Ridgeview know that, Gaylord Fire has been dispatched, and, they can talk to, each other on an SB channel. So Sibley County can open up that SB channel for everybody to talk to.
Well, and you guys do, I know that there's mock drills that are going on all the time. The fire department's training, the ambulance is training. During one of these trainings, it would be perfect time to implement a situation to make it happen and see how it works. Or maybe it doesn't work, but then you'd find out if it's working or not. And if that's the solution, or if we have to look into it deeper or something like that. So.
Okay, anything else? All right, we will move on. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
I have more on the ambulance.
Go
Having
ahead.
to do with the bills.
Yep, go ahead.
At the end of last week, Lori D. from Gaylord reached out to our Lisa about the bills. And I talked to Lisa on Friday about the bills for the ambulance under the JPA. And she informed me that the money that comes in from calls is coming into us electronically. It's set up through electronic funds transfer coming to the city of Arlington. It'd be very difficult to change that over to Gaylord if the JPA doesn't work, and to change it back over to Arlington to make sure we get our money. And then she'd already paid the bills. So the bills have been paid so far.
That had been for January?
Yep, for
Okay.
January, the bills have all been paid.
Yep.
But then she highlighted for me the difference. Yellow is what she paid that since the JPA, and pink she had questions about, because some of these are not just our ambulance. How is she supposed to split up Mediacom, Verizon, the utilities for the city, CenterPoint Energy, gas bills? Because it's for that building. How do you split that up? And she said, okay, then how do I get it over to them? How are we gonna do this? It wasn't planned in advance. She said, in theory, it might have sounded like a good idea to have Gaylord handle all the bills, but in reality, when it came down to her paying the bills, it's easier if she just pays them than to try to get them over to Gaylord. And we could reconcile at the end.
Reconcile at the end of the 6
That's
months?
what Lisa and I said, why
Makes
we
sense.
could just
So Lisa
reconcile
was
at the end.
never consulted on this in the
Yeah,
planning
She
stage.
said she went to one meeting.
Okay.
Well, I think they talked, didn't they? The two ladies from each community, to try and figure out how
I
it was
think-
gonna work.
Limited, obviously.
Well, but I mean, they spoke with one another to try and see how they would make it happen. But I didn't get any information after that.
She said in theory it was a good idea, but when it comes down to practice, it's easier. Cause there's a lot of, she doesn't even know how she would split that up. So it might be easier to
So
reconcile.
are you saying she agreed to it and recommended it without really going all the way through it and making sure it was a good idea? She just said,
In
this
theory.
sounds like in theory it would be a good
It
idea?
would work. I'm not sure how much she was
Yeah.
consulted on what she was going to be, on what
Well,
was gonna happen.
I mean, Lisa.
Our Lisa.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
Well, I think coming out of that meeting, they both had the same idea of what the group was expecting. So then they were to meet to figure out how they were gonna do this. So in theory, it
And
was supposed to work okay.
But it's
And
not,
that,
yeah.
but now that it's practiced,
Mhm.
she has more questions. So instead of just leaving things go, she paid the bills.
She took care of it already. Mhm.
Okay, so that's.
this
I
is
think.
this type of stuff that comes out during a trial period when you're trying
That's
to
all
Yep.
that's
join
Exactly,
powers.
exactly,
All stuff to
yes,
work
yes,
through.
yeah.
But
I don't know, from my perspective, I think this is something that should have been figured out before we went into a trial period. You start looking at what you're gonna have to pay, gee, it's gonna be tough to divide up those
You should have
utility
printed
bills,
this
that
out
should have
and
been
figured out the
obvious.
Well,
Well,
at least had
technically,
some
we
kind of an
don't-
idea of the percentage.
We haven't approved the trial.
We
Right.
never approved the bill paying, correct?
We
They
never
passed a
approved that.
resolution
We
to
haven't-
do a trial period. It was, I sent it in one of the packets once where it does say there would be an 8-month trial period. It was a resolution the city of Arlington approved last year at some point. But it did not spill out any details on how this was gonna happen. It said nothing about the finances.
So what's
No,
the
but that was the
downside?
one that we had just tabled.
No.
That's what
No.
'cause
No.
that had
It
the
was-
finances where it said
Right, that we
50-50
never
split.
passed with the financial information.
Yeah.
Arlington did pass a resolution to go into the
The trial,
period.
that was probably in what, August or September?
Mid last year
September.
was
Yeah.
resolution,
Yeah.
yeah, mid last year.
Mm-hmm.
What is the downside to us continuing to pay these bills and
I
Gaylord
think
just
we
doing
can-
payroll?
We can reconcile it at the end.
At the end, just add
That's
them all.
what-
Just
I don't think
reconcile it
there's
at the
much
end.
to-
Do, yeah,
Is-
as
Here's the
long as they
resolution
agree.
that was passed, if you wanna pass
As
that
long
to
as
Joe
they
so you
agree
can
with
see,
what
it's
we want
No,
to
pretty,
reconcile.
I was gonna say, that one's pretty generic.
It was
They might say
before you
agreed
came
to pay
on.
the- That's why
I
we
think.
probably
I
should
don't
bring it
know.
up
Maybe
now.
not, maybe
Now
not.
that you're talking
I don't
about
Heck
it,
of a
but I
way to run a
definitely know it wasn't
railroad.
money.
Yeah, this should have been figured out.
Shouldn't we
before,
get a
but-
hold of them in the near future to let them know we have an issue with this?
Well, I know there's a
Or
meeting
how it's going
coming
to
up.
be worked out, other than we wait 8 months and they say, well, that was your share. I mean, we don't know right now.
I mean, according to what I'm reading in the emails,
Oh,
it
yeah,
sounds
yeah,
like
yeah,
that
that's what I was
those who are
thinking.
paying the bills want it to stay how they're currently doing it today. Isn't
But
that
from
the gist of
the
it?
city's end,
Yeah.
It's just a
Lisa
matter of-
would prefer to just keep paying the
Keep
bills,
doing
we'll
it this way.
reconcile it at the end.
At the end, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
Gaylord
I
does
think,
not like that idea.
well, here's the thing, I think what has to be done and what should be done is it be brought back to the JPA, put on on their agenda for the next meeting, and have these two people from each of the cities come in and say, this just won't work. This is our idea how this would work. It would work if we each did our own bills. Gaylord, you can do the payroll, but then we have, everything is together. It can be together very easily, but it's separated, and we know. I mean, how are we gonna take care of the pink highlighted things? How are we gonna take care of and have them bring it up to that group and have that group say, okay, I got you. I understand, right? And I'm sure the group will. I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. It doesn't work, okay?
Just
Or then let's
let-
sit down and figure out how we're
Well,
gonna.
especially since she already paid some of the bills, cause now you look at it, some of the bills have already been paid
Right.
by
But
us.
moving
You're just
forward-
muddling this up terribly
Right,
if
By
you try
changing
to.
the
But
But
process
in
now.
changing the process now, she
Yeah.
already started it.
Moving forward, you could do two different things, though. You could probably, sitting in that meeting, the group could come up with a thing and say, okay, well, maybe it is, a third of those costs for that building, and for that building, and in Gaylord, maybe it's half of those costs, the ones that are kinda, we don't know exactly where they should. I don't know, I'm just throwing things out there, maybe what they can work through.
yeah,
Yeah, I
And
think I
maybe they
agree that
can't.
the people doing the bills
Right.
need to come to the JPA and have give
Have
us
input.
input on this, but it just, yeah.
To change it mid,
Yeah,
to-
change
we're
it
gonna-
midstream doesn't make sense.
Like,
But-
yeah.
So,
yeah, so, when you look at it from a whole, I guess, so, when I think of a joint powers, it's almost, it's a separate entity in itself, and to do it and probably have it be really successful, you would need one person basically in charge of that, and the two communities
mhm.
kinda do this number.
Yeah.
And
And that's ultimately what's going to happen if JPA goes through.
because
It will be,
for me, how does Gaylord not take in part of transporting? How do they also opt out of, the fire department doesn't respond to assist as well. How do they get the full benefit and then yet deal with 50%?
they get
It's, well, yeah, we don't really wanna deal with that. why don't you guys take care of that? And that's maybe a absurd analogy, but for me, you know, if we're gonna split the cost true, it's looking at one entity in the end, and then this is the area that we pull our resources from. And then you basically treat it as a business.
Mhm.
However we staff it, we staff it.
Yep, yep.
But it's equal. The way it's currently being written, or currently being proposed, I don't know if it truly is equal. And I don't think I, in the end, could end up supporting that.
Well, what you're talking about now, though, with paying the bill, I mean, that's more of a process, not, nobody's talking about is 50/50 accurate or not.
We were on the
We're
topic,
talking
so I
about
had
the
to get it out
process.
there.
So, yeah, no, I understand,
Yeah,
I understand where you're coming from, but it's the process. Do
Right.
we continue going forward with the process of Lisa here paying the bills, or do we change in the middle
By
of the
the
stream?
time we meet on March 19th, she'll probably
And she'll
pay some more
pay
bills. I
in
just
February.
gotta tell you,
That's right.
more bills will have been paid
They've
by
gotta
then.
be paid.
So we're gonna, yeah, they gotta be paid, so we're gonna be into this.
Well, I mean, communications then, and if that's what the ladies in both communities have already stated, but then continue what they're doing, but go to that meeting, that needs to be brought up as a point of this isn't working, right? So have that group take care of it and fix it.
And by that token, by the time that the trial period's over, to Joe's point, you should technically then have one account for MediaCom, Verizon, the utilities, all under that JPA, and have authorized people assigned,
I
And,
wouldn't do that until
Lisa's
it's
and the Lorries of the
finalized.
world assigned to
No, he's saying if it
right,
If
to
it were,
pay
if it were,
those
yeah.
from that one coffer,
Right,
right?
right, right. If the JPA goes forward and
Right.
becomes official.
Right.
Do they even use the same media or utility companies? I mean, how is that
Probably
divided up? I mean,
Not.
so we,
No,
whatever we're
there's-
spending, whatever they're spending is gonna go into some sort of
Pot,
pot.
Well,
and
I
then we divide it.
50/50.
It's very complicated.
It
To
is.
get it right. But again, I mean, we're trying it.
I don't know, I think all of these things, we gotta have them hammered out, really fine detail, black and white. Bring it to the JPA, let's go through it again. Have the women doing the bills turn up, let's walk through it, have a plan in place.
I'd like to see them there to discuss,
We should have that
To see
done
how it's
before our
working,
trial
yeah.
period is over, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
work it all through.
But I wouldn't guess
Absolutely.
bet on it.
Well, and I guess let's be truthful here. We knew there'd be bumps in the road
right.
during this thing. And
This
it
is
wasn't
the-
all gonna be with staffing. It wasn't all gonna be with radio communication. Some of it is on, right now, what we're talking about now. So we've got some things to work out also.
I guess, you know, if they're covering payment of a lot of things and we're covering payment of some things, in the end, it's gonna be a smaller check in the time period that we would write to them, I'm guessing.
Or vice versa.
Yeah, we don't know, cause we don't know what they're spending and they don't know what we're spending.
Yeah.
So there's no way of knowing any of that.
Okay, but it's all managed by the same, right? It's,
Might be managed by the same, but I doubt they know what Lisa's writing out for checks every
Yeah,
month.
I would
Right.
say as soon as that's been
So
ready,
they still,
can
and we
send
don't
it.
know what they're spending per month.
And that goes back to even the point, you know, last month when Joe was saying, how am I confident to know that this person's gonna be up on their
They wouldn't be
financials?
writing my bills out, I'll
Right.
tell you that
You
much.
can't be confident.
Right,
There's no way of knowing that.
right.
Not the way it is right now.
And I wouldn't expect anybody to pay mine as well. I mean, I say that and that's where it comes to. So say in the end, we say, oh, well, we had $38,000 worth of expenses. These are what our expenses are. And they're sidelined. They go, oh, what the heck is all this? We paid all the bills. You owe us this much money. And then it becomes potentially.
Yeah.
That's why
well, I think
it's gotta
that's
be
why we're
brought up
keeping
now.
track as well of all the runs that we're doing and who's doing it. and all that other kind of stuff too, right?
Right.
Usually the money you got coming in, you have higher expenses
Yeah.
because you have more runs, but then you have more money coming in to pay for those expenses.
High level, there's revenue being generated from
Right,
both.
so it's the
correct.
lower
If that all
revenue.
goes into one pot,
Not if they're not, the way I understand it is our main, a big part of us making money is the transports from the hospital to, say, Abbott or another clinic. And if those are being lessened from potentially that going to Ridgeview, or the fact that Gaylord is not taking part in that lucrative side of it, it's gonna lessen the profitability of it.
You're correct, and I agree with you 100%. If we're gonna do transfers, we're gonna do transfers, period.
Both have
Yeah.
to do.
You have to have
Absolutely,
both.
who's ever on
You
duty
have
that
to.
day,
No,
absolutely.
now we're putting more into the program than they are.
And
Yeah.
that's.
Okay, well, if you're
All the
looking
way
at it
around.
at sides, I'm saying that as a group, right? No matter who's on call,
It
it's,
doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Both
should-
parties in
Right.
the group
Exactly.
have to do the
It
work.
doesn't matter
Signed
who's
up
on
for
call,
it,
that's
you
right.
took the-
But then it comes down to staffing again, because you have to have that backup.
And that might be the
Right.
problem, maybe
Staff.
they don't
And
have the
that's why we're
staffing to
trying
do
this
that.
to see, and that was the starting point.
Well, my understanding is that if it's not covered, then they typically in the past would
But-
have already
Bob, am I wrong? Is Arlington more able to cover long distance transfers during the day than Gaylord? Because Gaylord, typically those folks are working and they're not willing or able to take off the amount of time it would require for a long distance transfer.
Yes, that is correct.
They-
Their day call people, a lot of their shifts are fractured, where, they're not on for the full 12 hours. And that is because of where they work. Their employer allows them to, take the time off for a 911 call, to go, say, as far, we've kind of set a 30-mile limit, which would be Waconia, Mankato, Queen of Peace, those, New Ulm. But anything over that, then when they would get back to work, they would have to make up that lost time. So therefore, that's where they came up with this texting page in the system.